Hi, I'm Chef Carol, and what could be better on Valentine's Day than a chocolate cheesecake with raspberry swirl? Well, I'm going to show you how to make that for you and for yours. So let's get to it. Start my chocolate cheesecake with raspberry swirl this Valentine's Day. I have in advance baked chocolate wafers. They're not overly sweet, and you can also use Oreo cookie crumbs or any other type of chocolate cookie crumb. I actually converted this chocolate wafer cookie from a recipe in the New York Times called chocolate wafer cookie. To start, I'm going to need 113 grams of crumbs. So I will start that by just adding enough cookies to create 113 grams. Exactly 113. I'm going to crumble these up, and I will add to this the melted butter and the salt. I have a springform pan, 6 inches, prepared to bake this cheesecake crust. So once I get the cheesecake crust baked, I will let it cool off and I will begin making the filling. I have 21 grams of melted butter, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, and 113 grams of cookie crumbs. Just going to get this good stir. I made these cookies using a keto-friendly flour. I also used an allulose sugar, and that makes this cookie crust very keto-friendly. To prepare my springform pan, I placed a piece of parchment on the bottom, secured it before I clamped the pan shut, and I used a non-stick flour spray for baking around the edge of the pan. Okay, I don't think I can mix this anymore. Just going to add the cookie mixture into the springform pan and try to press it evenly around the bottom. And you want to come up the sides about an inch. Okay, once I get this pressed down, I'm going to bake it in a 325-degree oven for 8 to 10 minutes. While this is baking, I'm going to start on the filling. I will begin the filling by adding 12 ounces of cream cheese that I have allowed to come to room temperature. And to that, I am going to add 75 grams of sugar, or my allulose sweetener. And I'm going to use the paddle mixer. I'm going to let this mix for about 4 or 5 minutes on a medium speed. To add an extra 1/4 of a cup of sweetener. The allulose is not as sweet as sugar. The mixture appears to be smooth and fluffy. Just going to scrape down the bowl again and make sure that everything on the bottom has been mixed in. Very important. I'm going to melt the chocolate. Next, I'm going to add in the eggs. Make sure each egg is fully incorporated into the mix. Next, I'm going to add in the sour cream. Also, the vanilla. I'm using a powdered vanilla and the salt. That was 90 grams of sour cream, a 1/2 tablespoon of vanilla, and a 1/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt. I'm going to add in my chocolate, which is slightly melted and cooled. to add in the raspberry jam. And I'm just going to take a skewer and swirl it. The oven is at 325. I'm going to bake it for 50 to 60 minutes or until the center is just wiggly. Then I'm going to turn off the oven and prop the door open and let the cheesecake sit in the oven for 30 minutes before I remove it and set the pan on a rack to cool to room temperature. I'm also going to bake this in a tray just in case there's any spillover. The chocolate cheesecake has cooked in the oven for 40 minutes. I turned the oven off and I allowed it to stay in there another 30 minutes. Now I'm just going to take a knife and run it around the side of the cake. And this is just to loosen it away from the edge of the cake, because I did use the spray, but it's just a good idea to make sure it's separated. This way when you release the spring form, half of the cake is not still stuck to it. From this point, it will sit out until it comes to room temperature. Then I will place it in the refrigerator covered with plastic wrap overnight. And tomorrow, the cake will be ready to cut. I'll see you then. Yesterday, I baked the cheesecake. I let it sit to room temperature and cool off. And then it spent over 24 hours in the refrigerator. And now it's time for the unveiling. If you remember yesterday, I ran a knife around the outside perimeter of the cheesecake, and I'm now going to release the spring form. It lifts off nicely. And now you can see the cheesecake has that nice chocolate wafer crumb. You can also see a lot of the strawberry swirl. I will try and plate this now. I'm going to cut into it. The first slice is always the hardest, so I want to give the knife a little cleaning in between. Now let me just lift that out. So you can see it has a very nice height to it. This was only a 6-inch pan, and for our keto lifestyle, this is just big enough. Well, I hope you try the recipe. I hope you find it delicious, and let me know your feelings. Ideally, I would garnish it with raspberries and maybe a little fresh cream, but today I just have a little canned cream, but I think it's gonna work out just fine. Bon appetit.